Hello, my fellow webheads. It's your friendly neighborhood, Jerry Rasco, with you today to talk about a very fun, different kind of issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Yes, it is that time again. We are going to look at one of the Amazing Spider-Man annuals. So we've talked about this before. If you are a fan of the channel, this will be annual number 5. So we've done this a few times. Basically, what happens is, in the printing schedule of comics, which are typically monthly, you will end up with extra weeks within the year just based on some months don't have the same number of weeks in them. And so it's just a scheduling issue that allows for the company to go, hey, we have an extra printing month here, an extra issue. What do we want to do with it? And usually an annual is a book that features a story that is not in continuity. It's usually outside of the ongoing story. And a lot of times it will feature a different art team as well. So whether that's a team to kind of explore maybe other artists, give new artists sort of a tryout or a chance, or just give your regular artists a break to catch up on those deadlines. So annuals are usually much larger volumes, more pages, and that is the case with this one here. So I will warn you, strap in. This is going to be a little bit longer video just because we have a lot more comic to go through. Of course, I want to thank everybody who's been subscribing to the channel. It's been phenomenal. We're seeing increased growth in the subscribers, which is the big push for the year. So thank you all for doing that. And of course, as always at this point, I want to mention the art giveaways. If you're a subscriber, you can win free art just by being a subscriber when we reach the 1,000 subscriber mark. We're continuing to make constant goals towards that. So thank you all so much for clicking that subscribe button. Remember, subscribing to a YouTube channel is completely free. You can also consider hitting the like and the notification. When you hit those notifications, you'll know when each new video comes out. And right now we do have videos coming out 3 days a week, but that is going to be increasing here. So if you like these, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you'll be part of all the series we do. That said, we've got an Amazing Spider-Man piece celebrating this series on the channel. We have an Incredible Hulk piece that will be going out to one lucky winner. Also, just again, celebrating our Hulk series here on the channel. And then we have this original school uniform X-Men piece, again, to celebrate our X-Men series that we're doing. So if you want to win art, all you have to do is click the subscribe button. It is completely free, no purchase necessary. Even the shipping is free. So when we pick those winners at random, they'll be receiving art at no cost to them whatsoever. So if you like that idea, click that subscribe button, help out the channel, and of course, let folks know. So that all said, we're going to be heading over and taking a look at the comic here. So let's jump into it. So this is the cover to the King Size Special Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 5. And as you can see, it is definitely a little different. One thing to note here, my normal... the normal comics that we review are the actual scans of real paper comics. That's not the case here. So in that series, that Spider-Man series, they did not include the annuals, just the regular series. And so what I've had to do is go to Comixology, which is an online comic book store, and you can view those comics online. However, when you go to Comixology and you look at these books, they are all digitally recolored. So this is not the original colors necessarily. I think they've done a very good job of trying to match it. I don't have a page-by-page comparison on the interiors of the comic, but that's what I found. They're just using modern techniques to kind of improve a little bit of the lighting and the shading in times, but kind of keeping it to a more consistent, flat printing color. That said, let's just talk about the cover itself. It's interesting. It's a John Romita cover. I like the inclusion of Spidey's supporting cast here, and it really does play out how many people are part of Spidey's life. Obviously, Aunt May, Gwen Stacy, Gwen's dad, J. Jonah Jameson, Robbie Robertson, Mary Jane with her new as I call it, Orphan Annie haircut. I think this is supposed to be Jameson's son, John, was he Air Force captain or something to that effect. Harry Osborne, his roommate. You've got Ned Leeds and Betty Brant, reporter and secretary at the Bugle. Uncle Ben. And then down here, it's a little hazier. You don't really see. I wonder if this is supposed to be Frederick Foswell. Let me zoom in. Can I zoom in? Yeah, I think I can zoom in here. Yeah. Oops. This little face down here, that's who it looks like to me, is Frederick Foswell. But Frederick Foswell died quite a while ago. So maybe it's not supposed to be him. Maybe it's supposed to be somebody else, but that's who it certainly reminds me of. Okay, so we're going to head in, and as I mentioned, again, this is a digitally copied version. And one of the things that can happen as well, in a normal comic, there are page breaks. So what that means is when you turn the page, sometimes there'll be an advertisement on one side or the other, or sometimes both of the facing pages. We don't have any ads. They've taken out the ads, but when you do that, you mess up the page count, and the pages don't necessarily line up the way they're supposed to. A page that's supposed to be on the left, when you take out that ad, is now on the right. And so I think later there may be an inserted page that, again, I don't have a side-by-side comparison to be able to tell you for sure, but just my suspicion is there is at least one added in page to make the page turns work here, and we'll get to that when we get there. But again, as I mentioned, you can see the sort of, again, flat color. So they're using the same tones that were used in the original Spidey, as far as like the red, the blue on his costume. It's just a nice, solid, flat digital color. Overall, let's talk about the art team real quick. We've got, of course, Stan Lee writing, and then Larry Lieber. He's not listed as the artist, but that is the case because we know Mickey DeMeo is a name for Mike Esposito, who's been inking a lot of Marvel books in these series that we do, especially Spider-Man. So we know that that's the inker. There's a John Romita consultant credit, which makes me wonder, was he working on maybe layouts? So just sort of breaking down the story in the pages, and then given to Larry Lieber to actually go ahead and pencil. The other thing, let's talk about Larry Lieber real quick. I believe we may have talked about him earlier in the series, but it's been a long time, so let's recap that. So Larry Lieber is Stan Lee's younger brother. So Lieber is their real name. Stan Lee, the Lee is just a shortened version of Stan's name. He's said in numerous interviews over the years that the reason he didn't use his full legal name when writing comics was because at the time comics were looked at as sort of trash writing, the way you would think of like romance novels or sort of just very lowbrow entertainment, certainly at the time designed for kids, not something a real writer, right, author would write. And so he always said he was saving his real name for his the next great American novel that he never got around to writing. So kind of ironic there. Larry is Stan's younger brother. Eventually he started working for Atlas Comics, primarily with romance comics. So Atlas is pre-Marvel. Primarily doing romance comics. He also wrote a lot of comics as well. So working with Stan, working with Jack Kirby, doing a lot of writing. And I would argue he's probably more prolific as a writer than a regular comic artist. Now, that said, he did work more. So he did, number of comics, lots of issues, stuff like that. But in terms of Marvel and the superhero stuff, he's definitely more well known for newspaper strips. So again, if you remember, depending on your generation, if you remember newspaper comics, every day the newspaper would come out with a page of the comics. And you'd have stuff like Peanuts and Garfield and, Calvin and Hobbes and character and news strips like that, comic strips. But there were also Marvel also had comic strips. So they had a regular daily Spider-Man strip. I believe there was also a Hulk strip at one time. The Spidey was definitely the longest running one, and Larry Lieber was involved in that for a really, really long time. So that's probably where he's most well known. And there's a few times here where you can kind of see that in the art where you go, this definitely would fit in a comic strip where your space is limited. You're only working with 3 or 4 panels a day, in black and white. So, again, makes sense. But again, just want to provide you with some historical background here so we know kind of what we're dealing with in terms of Larry. So that's the team. The splash here is a good splash. Jumps right into the story. Always love that. Spidey, his spider sense is going. He's about to be attacked. So it's a great way to kick off a story with action. The pose is not bad. One of the things I noted throughout the story is the characters are a little stiff. There's less twisting of the limbs and body than we've seen in the regular series. So this is an example, right? You have Spidey, he's bent over, which is good coming at us. This hand is good coming at us. This one is more horizontal. I'd like to see those shoulders turned more, especially in a counter action to the hips. So we do have, if the left arm's coming forward, the right leg has to come forward and vice versa. That's great. But if you really twisted that arm a little more to be going back and maybe twist those legs a little further, that could add more energy as opposed to sort of a standing pose to a real like running on the wall pose. The last thing I'll point out is that the mask pattern is just a little bit off. So you can see like this line comes down to sort of not the middle, but let's say the third of the eye, whereas this one comes down and it's on the inside. So it's just a touch off. And then also we're seeing a little bit more of the webbing, the concentric webbing circles than we would normally see on Spidey's face. So it's minor, but for me, obviously, one, I'm doing this series. So every week we're looking and really nitpicking on the details of Spidey. And the pattern is there to be something that's repeatable and consistent. And so when you don't see consistency, for me, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Not bad here. I like his spider sense is going. He's got this shadow that warns him. This is a pretty nice pose here of him ducking this knife throw, which is pretty cool. And then all the bad guys jump out to get him. Very reminds me a lot of Indiana Jones, right? One of the things that I also said, which was pretty nice, there's big panels throughout this book when we get to the big action, which is also a really, a real plus for me. I hate seeing a big action scene in 19 tiny little panels on a page. So we've got a lot of room to breathe. However, when you have a lot of room to breathe, you want to make sure you're filling it up with something. And in this panel down here, yes, you have all these figures. Some of these could be larger in the foreground. Spidey could be a little bigger. There's just a lot of dead space. There's plenty of room for dialogue, but there's kind of some dead space in here that we could be doing something with. And that's just, again, making a more dramatic view of the action by moving a figure closer. Like this figure in the red fez, Spidey, the guy in the yellow shirt, pretty similar size. Spidey's a little bit smaller, but not crazy difference. And then this guy with the knife at the window, again, not kind of similar in scale. I'd really like to see one character much, much bigger and then others much, much smaller, more in line with what you see here. We're much closer to Spidey as he's leaping down into the action. That's just a more dynamic pose. However, I will also point out, this is another problem that I have here, and that is the shadows. Shadows are really important, and a lot of times artists will sometimes forget or just leave them out because If you're doing a night scene and there's dramatic lighting, if you're really drawing shadows the way they would be, everything here would be casting shadows. Walls, stairs, people, rooftops, you name it. And so everybody would be in the dark. There'd be very little stuff being lit. So you have to take some artistic license and add essentially light that isn't there. But at the same time, if you don't put shadows under your people, under your figures, or you do like this where there's just a little bit of a gap underneath Spidey's feet, the characters float. They're not grounded. There's no idea of the space. Like, is one guy further away, closer? Where are they in relationship to each other? We can use other cues, visual cues, to figure that out. But like this one here, Spidey's supposed to be sticking to the wall and throwing a guy down, but he's floating on that wall. Then here he's leaping down, but the shadows are touching his feet. So now it makes it feel like he's stuck to the wall there. It's a little confusing. And then all these guys have no shadows whatsoever. So especially here, this guy, he's in a deep dark shadow, but he doesn't cast a shadow. The wall doesn't cast a shadow. So it's all very haphazard in terms of the lighting. And lighting is one of the things, those shadows, might not recognize it, but it helps our brain orient things in space. And so it's very, very important. So yeah, here you've got a shadow right here, and now we don't really have anything. So it's very hit or miss, right? Sometimes we get it and it's great. Sometimes we're completely missing out. This is what I was talking about when I said the figures were a little stiff. So Spidey jumps down and he tackles these guys, and then kicks out and knocks out the guy behind him. This is super stiff. I mean, he looks like a frog. It's very easy to move one figure down a little bit, twist his shoulders, twist his hips the other way, have one leg. It can even be extended off the page. That's fine. You don't have to have them both curled in like that. One leg could go off the page and then the other could be curled up, which is fine. But just having the hips, shoulders in line, perpendicular again is this, parallel is this, perpendicular is this. So your spine, hips, and shoulder are all perpendicular. You want them at angles. You want them twisted, tilted. That gives a character movement and energy. Not bad here with, this action smashing the cart full of the melons, and then him hanging on this bridge underneath and using his webs to disarm the guys and then beat him up a little bit. It's pretty good stuff there. Interesting. The guy kind of throws him. Spidey rolls and then pushes off and uses his head as a battering ram. It's an interesting take on Spidey's agility and fighting style. I have no problem with that. It's just the figure is, again, so stiff, and there's just something so weird about it. This guy who's getting hit it doesn't feel like he's being struck by Spidey in a way. Yes, he's all bent up, but I don't know. There's just something very odd and awkward about the whole thing. So anyway, just weird. Whereas this pose here, him leaping, this is what I'm talking about. This is some great, zoom in on that one. That's great. Great twist. This shoulder and arm going back, forward, opposite of the hips. Nice movement. The back is bent, the head jutting forward. Excellent, excellent stuff. That's what you're looking for. Spidey gets shot at, and he gets kind of dinged. He gets grazed, I guess. You'd think we've seen that his reflexes are enough that he can dodge bullets, but in this case, it nicks him enough to knock him out. And I like the falling sequence. We go from zoomed out to zoomed in to really zoomed in. So he falls off the roof, hits the ground, nice foam splash into the water. Again, good body language there of a sort of limp person, limp body, and then the water and the bubbles disappear and he's gone. That's a really nice sequence. I think it's terrific. and then the bad guys leave, and we have another really nice sequence of Spidey's not dead. He just crawls out of the water. The hand here, excellent. Reaching out. When you have characters, there's a couple of things that really breathe life into them. Obviously, you have a character with no mask, or where you can see their face. Their eyes, their facial expression becomes very critical. The other thing is hands. It's very easy for artists to fall into just sort of a lot of this, a lot of this. It's a lot easier to draw than fingers in space. Their hands can be very complicated. And if you can draw expressive hands like this, it's really going to help you out. That said, this is all really nice. Spidey comes out, collapses. The face here is not right, and I think it's the eyes. This is a note that I have throughout the book numerous times. It keeps trying to draw the head in perspective, meaning the head tilted up, the head tilted down, not just Spidey either. And they're not always hitting the mark. So, like, if Spidey is laying flat with the back of his head on the ground and we're looking at him this way, we're going to see a lot more of the top of the head and less of the eyes. Now, I understand he doesn't have a face, but you could do it by sort of moving shortening up the chin, moving the eyes down a little bit, or tilting that angle a little bit. This isn't a bad upshot here on the next page where we're looking up at that chin and back. That one is actually one that surprisingly works pretty well. But this one, again, it just sort of looks like it's an egg with the face pasted on, like we're looking straight at it, but it's not. It's a different angle, and it's not working for me. The overall picture is fine, and again, in terms of the story, not a big deal. What we're doing here is we are really deep diving into this art and really picking out all the details. So it may sound a little fussy, if you will, or overly critical, but again, just that's what we're here for, right? So Peter, now he's unconscious, and we start to find out why, this backstory, what's going on, why is he in this foreign country, why are people attacking him? Well, it turns out he found some old documents at that point towards his parents had been possibly spies against the United States, so that they were traitors, and he is freaking out. So nice upshot here of up the stairs. We've got a couple of things. You've got good perspective. So perspective is you pick everything in space as you look, as it goes away, your view narrows down and disappears to a point. We've all seen this. You take a road, a long road in the desert, and the road just goes, and those two lines, parallel lines, meet at a point so far away that you can't see them. And that is perspective. So we have that here. As he's going up the stairs, things are going away from us and getting slightly smaller. Then you also have the Dutch angle. Talked about that. His house is not built on an angle. The house is straight up down, again, perpendicular to the earth. But this is a moment of great tension, great anxiety. So you tilt that angle, and it tells us, the readers, hey, this is a big deal. So Peter confronts Aunt May about what's going on and why she never told anybody about his parents. And so, again, we get some more. So we have a backstory inside of backstory. So we're already flashbacking to when Peter found this out, and then Aunt May is going to flash back to when Peter is a baby and his parents died and tell the story. So crazy. So yeah. And again, it's all very solid. Everybody's on model. On model means you have a character design. So Peter has this sort of tight, short, swept-back haircut with a little bit of a curl at the top, kind of a squared-off chin. Aunt May, the older lady with the white hair and the deep, bun on the back. Everybody's on model. But I find that, again, unless there's a dramatic issue, like the silhouette here is great. I think that's really wonderful. We've kind of wrapping up the conversation with Aunt May and Peter, and she's upset. So you have the two figures in silhouette together with some dramatic lighting. Works terrific. Outside of that, there's very little shading on the characters themselves. They're very, very open. You see here, like, there's just the tiniest little shadow under Aunt May's ear, her jawline. Same with Peter. Very, very little shadows. Now, you could say it's a bright day. It's a bright, sunny day. But there's always shadows somewhere. And the shadows aren't necessarily about showing the darkness. The shadows help emphasize the three-dimensionality and the roundness of forms. And when you don't have them, everything appears very flat. And for me, that's one of the things of this comic. The comic feels flat. Your figures feel very flat. And that's because there just, in my opinion, aren't enough shadows on it. But again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, remember, Larry's doing comic strips, cartoon newspaper strips in black and white. If you go real heavy with all that black on newsprint, might not work as well, might bleed, or you just don't need it. You want that openness, to help tell that story in a pure black and white kind of imagery. And you're not caring so much about the three-dimensionality of it. This style would definitely work and kind of feels cartoon strip to me. All right, so let's get back here. And one of the things I noted from a story perspective, I've said this before. So this is supposed to be baby Peter Parker and his parents, Richard and Mary. And you start to go, wait a minute, why? And he mentions Ben is Richard's brother. That's why they're all named Parker. But why is Ben Parker like 3 times the age of his brother? Like, what is happening? I always assumed, personally, that Aunt May and Uncle Ben were Peter's, like, great aunt and uncle. So I had, growing up, my grandparents' brothers and sisters were just known to me as Aunt so-and-so, Uncle so-and-so, but they were my great aunt and uncle. And because of the age of May and Peter, and this is, he's a baby. He's maybe 20 years old here. So 20 years later, May is just as old as she was as a baby. So when Peter was a baby. So again, the age thing makes no sense to me. I understand the visual. You have to draw Aunt May and Uncle Ben the way readers understand them so they know who they are. But she's telling the story as a flashback. It wouldn't be the end of the world to make them a little, 20 years younger in this flashback, but whatever, neither here nor there. But it's just a story thing that always kind of bothered me, that Aunt May and Uncle Ben are not Peter's great aunt and uncle, and I couldn't understand why that's a problem. So anyway, they go through that whole story, and Peter's very upset that his parents died in a plane crash, branded as spies, and now he's not sure what to do. So we've got our classic Peter brooding, for days. It's, even though he can't even remember his parents because they died when he was an infant, this seems to greatly affect his own view on himself as a person. So he's just spiraling on this and decides, you know what, the only way to cure my blues is to be Spider-Man. So now we get back to, from story, let's talk about the art again. This changing pose. This is not the best costume reveal pose. It's fine, but it's not heroic in any way. And that's really the deal, right? We want to see this change from Peter to a hero, not just Peter taking off his shirt. Think about any time you see, and I know it's classic to that character, but when Clark Kent goes and he pulls open the shirt and you see the Spider-Man underneath, he's always broad, chin up, big, hey, and it's, I'm going from me to hero, and it's that release of the hero. And that's what I would have preferred to see here, is Peter being like, all right, enough. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, and kind of doing one of these, and as he's taking that. The other thing to note, and I am going to zoom in on this because I think it's important to remember, I've talked about it before in faces, but hands are key too. Be careful how many lines you draw on your hands as an artist. The more lines you put around a knuckle, the more on the back of the hands, these tendons and veins in the back of our hands, the older the hands look. And so you have to just be careful of that. Unless it's under great, great tension. Like if he was pulling apart, a piece of steel or concrete or something using his spider strength, great. You can put that tension into the hand. It makes sense. For him to just pull his shirt off, I don't need, especially in a small panel, small image, don't put these lines in. It just makes it look like he's got hands that are, 40 years older than he is. So, doesn't work. Last thing, sorry, we zoomed out. We're going to zoom back in. He's swinging away. Okay, great. Swinging pose, not so bad. However, we're going to talk about tangents. We talk about these all the time. Again, if you're a longtime viewer of the series or any of my others, we talk about this a lot. Tangents are when two lines of two objects on different planes line up almost exactly, and it blurs the sense of depth, and we lose our illusion of three-dimensionality on a two-dimensional surface. So what I mean by that is when you see Spidey's foot here, he is overlapping these buildings. None of the edges and lines line up. That's great. Same with this foot here. We're doing very, very good. Everything is offset enough so that nothing blends together. Terrific. The problem is right here, and it's very subtle, but this line, which is supposed to be the sort of top edge of a building, lines up very much with this line of his arm right there. What does that do? Now, when you look at this in regular size and you blur across it, you go, it's fine. No big deal. But if you kind of look, your brain wants to fill in the gaps, and it's going to continue this line, and it's going to say, even though I can't see an edge or a shape here, this is black over here, this is an edge, this is a line. It almost looks like he's laying on top of the continuation of this building. Not that this is another building that he's in front of, because of that line. And again, starts to flatten out, puts this part of his arm on the same plane as this element of the building here, and kind of messes things up. So it's a very simple fix. You simply drop this line down about a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch. No big deal, and all is forgiven. Or you raise it up. Very simple, but something to be aware of. Every artist, we all will make this mistake. Everybody will have a tangent or multiple tangents in their art at one time or another. But the more you can avoid them, the better off your art will be. Again, not much to talk about here on this page. So far, Spidey's just looking for trouble, and he finds a poor guy who is at his own business late at night. He's not robbing it. So he's just kind of frustrated. He can't focus on anything. He can't focus on school. He can't focus on his food. He can't even focus on his friends and girlfriend. He's just very torn by this whole deal that his parents were spies and traitors. And that cuts to here being like, I've got to do something about it. And this is another example here, as I mentioned earlier, about the kind of miss on an up shot on a face. So talked about it a million times. When you have a head in space, it's a three-dimensional sphere, and when you tip that head back, the features on our face tip up away from the viewer. And so just like that staircase or that road going off in the distance, it's not as severe, but you have to consider perspective, meaning the top of the head is further away than the chin, and it has to be somewhat smaller. And then our features, the head doesn't rotate and the features stay in the same spot. Our features roll back as well. So you're going to see less forehead. You're going to see less of the bridge, an extension top of the nose, and just more of the underside. And you're going to see more of that chin even underneath. And here, we're sort of halfway in between. It's not a true upshot, but it's not a straight on shot either. They're trying to hit the middle and it doesn't work. You have to commit one way or the other. And what I mean by that is we see the underside of the nose. The eyes are slightly tipped so that we see that underside, where the pupils and the irises are kind of connecting with the lower lid. So he's kind of looking like this, but nothing's moved up. We also can tell, like, just the view, because he's up higher in the page, we're not really looking straight at Peter. So it's just, yeah, again, just sort of a miss there where it's very easy to kind of tip it. But I'll say this, my experience, and I think other artists would back this up, an upshot of that human head is one of the harder angles to draw a human face at. Lastly, I mentioned as well, don't put too many lines on your hands, especially a younger character. Yes, he's flexing and he's doing this, so the knuckles might be a little more prominent, but you add in these feathering lines, especially across the top of the fingers and stuff like that, it just works as wrinkles and it doesn't look like these hands fit this face. The other thing I want to very quickly talk about is drawing through the panel. So this is something I see a lot of younger or new artists miss out on, and that is your figure Peter here is drawn off panel. The borders of the panel cut off a lot of his body, his arms, etc. And this is what people do. You draw the head, you start drawing the shoulders, then you draw the fists coming up, and you just put them where you think they would go. But does it line up? And what you really should do is draw out, not so much on this hand here, this one you can kind of fudge, but this one here, I would be doing the shoulder. I would draw the arm all the way down to where I think the elbow is. Then I would draw where that connects and draw the fist up into the panel. What I mean is the way that this is drawn, it doesn't really work. The angle of his forearm is going out, but the angle of his upper arm isn't. The upper arm is dropping straight down, but if I continue these lines down here, his elbow would be somewhere down in here, but that doesn't really line up with the bicep. They're separated. So this fist either needs to be moved in a little closer, overlapping the shoulder, or the angle of this arm has to come out further. And that's one where they just drew the fist in the panel. It's not drawn outside to continue to make sure that it's connected the way it should be. Spidey needs to get to, I think it's, what did they say, Algeria? Is that the deal? We'll see in a second. But he needs a ride to a foreign country, so who does he go to? The Fantastic Four. Interesting, he's had some ups and downs, let's say, in his relationship with the Fantastic Four. He does have a sort of sibling friendship rivalry with the Human Torch at times, but they've also put that aside at times and worked together a little bit. So it's kind of interesting that very quickly he just shows up to the Fantastic Four and is like, hey, I need a ship that will get me out of the country. And they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. It works great here. And Reed's like, I'll take you. And crazy. So, yeah, Algeria. So they're going to Algeria. And Reed's like, yeah, no problem. It's great. It gives me a chance to test out this new ship. Let's go. And now he's willing to put him anywhere he wants to be. And Spidey's like, no, I'll just jump out and make a web parachute so that everybody sees me land. One, everybody sees him land. Two, isn't that a big waste of a lot of webbing? You're in another country. You've only got the web cartridges for your web shooters of what's on your belt. Once you work through those, you're not going home anytime soon and collecting any web fluid. So you might want to be a little more cognizant of using it up when Reed could very easily just and gone. The other part is he drops him off. How's he getting home? That's later Spidey's problem. The current Spidey is not going to deal with that. Um, let's see here. All right, Yep. So we're gonna go through here. He's just looking for info, so he finds some guys. Hey, um, taking one little lead they had, going to a restaurant, finding some people, and kind of roughing the guy up a little bit to get some information out of him, which he does, and gets some other guys get tipped off, like, hey, Spidey's here, he's getting some information, we're going to take care of it. That finally leads us back to the splash page and to him crawling out of the river after being nicked in the head by a bullet, which seems to be no, you know, he seems to be no worse for wear. So he gets up and jumps away. This is really good. This pose here, oops, terrific stuff. Again, kind of what you're talking about. Let's get those shoulders and hips turned. Put Spidey into positions that only his agility will allow him to get. I love just the fingertips on the wall, his whole weight being supported as he's jumping through by those fingertips. Very, very nice. Simple, small figure, great pose though. Really nice stuff. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for and that I enjoy in these comics. So he follows, gets some information, is heading to a headquarters where he thinks he's going to find some info. Certainly does. Kind of crazy. Finds some files, starts looking through the files, and finds this card labeled Richard Parker, and he was part of some kind of, it says, enemy spy organization. Of course, the logo should have tipped us off that it's the Red Skull. So it's my first part of my notes. So I've shown you guys this before, my notes. Read the book, my notes on it. And at first glance, I said, oh, that's a good reveal of the Red Skull. But it would have been a lot better on the page turn, right? Imagine, you can't see it. He's reading that card. We don't know who the bad guy is. You turn that page, boom, and you have this big image of the Red Skull. So, that's would have been nice. It's not what we got, but it's a good image. And throughout this, most of the images of the Red Skull I wrote are very Kirby-like. Obviously, Jack Kirby is the guy who designed the Red Skull, but it's not just the design, it's the line work. So one of the things that Jack Kirby really did with his lines is he'd have what would be very organic, rounded shapes, like a skull, let's say. And he would make very jagged edges to some of those lines. Like, look at the teeth are very jagged. This lip of this skull and the angle on the chin. Bone should be soft, curved, rounded. It's not super, human beings don't have super hard angles like that. But that's how Jack drew these angles of the skull. And so we see that continued. So even though nobody else is drawn that way, we still are committing to the Kirby aesthetic. So it's not just that we're saying not just the Red Skull looks this way because Jack Kirby's style does. We're saying that's just the way he looks. So they're incorporating style into design and kind of mixing the two, which is, I find, very interesting. Now, this is the first page, or maybe the only page really, that I felt to me appears like a addition to this issue in order to fit the page turns. I could be wrong. The art style feels different here. The shading, so you see like the very hard, a lot of shadows on Spidey. His whole back is in shadow. We haven't seen that throughout the book at all. Just the posture, compare this posture to this posture. Even this one is a little more extreme. This one is more stiff. It just and also this is the only splash page. Now, if you're going to do a splash page, to me, do it on the reveal of the skull, not once he's been revealed and the two are talking and Red Skull's kind of, hey, you're a good guy. I guess I have to destroy you now. Very weird. And then the other part is just from a dialogue. Let's pretend that this splash page doesn't happen. Red Skull's like, hey, are you here to join me? Or do you have another reason for being here? And then he's like, my agents. So the people that attack Spidey, they're the ones, they're working for the Red Skull. They told me that you died in the canal. Well, I guess we were wrong. I'll have another guy beat you up and destroy you. You take out this splash page and nothing changes. So again, I feel like this was an add-on later trying to replicate the style, but an add-on to this book. I could be wrong. Again, if somebody has the actual original copy and you can let me know if that splash page is in there, it just felt a little out of place to me. Something to note as well. So they're drawing the Red Skull here, and I'm assuming that these lines are supposed to be hair. They're too small and too fine to be a shadow. They're also very inconsistent in where they are, so it doesn't appear to be hatching as far as a shadow goes. So I'm assuming this is hair. If you want to draw hair, body hair, facial hair, whatever on your figures, characters, remember it grows in specific ways. You probably, you can't see, but on my hand, my arm, I have hair and it grows across the form, not down. So something like, this is going to sound crazy, a dog's paw, a monkey, ape, stuff like that would possibly have hair that grows that way, like down towards the end of the paws. We human beings kind of wraps around the form. So great example is like Wolverine is a character that's always drawn with a lot of hair on his arms, legs, body, etc. And the best artists do that, where they go across that forearm and it helps sell the roundness as well. So this just doesn't make sense from a couple different points. That's just not how hair grows. Same thing. If you want to draw somebody with facial hair or even just stubble, you need to know how it grows, and it grows in different directions based on the angle of the body part that you're drawing it on. So, just a little bit of study, a little bit of observation, and you fix that issue right there. Again, stiff. It's not a bad fight scene with this big guy. But again, a little bit stiff, especially like this. So Spidey punches him, it doesn't do anything. And this is a big pet peeve of mine. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but we'll bring it back up. So Spidey is punching. He is swinging essentially a right-handed cross. So he's upside down. So it works from, in his perspective, left to right, but it's his right hand. So anyway, the point is, it's his motion on the page to us is coming from right across to the left, and he's punching the guy assumingly in the face. And this guy turns away. Boom. Why is he turned this way? So that the readers can see his face. Well, if that's the case, he's turning the wrong way. It would it's being punched this way, getting hit, and then going, ow, into the punch. If I get hit this way, the momentum in your reaction is to go the other way. So you always go with the flow of a punch, a kick, a strike, any kind of blow to a figure, even to an object. If I punch this microphone, I got my mouse here. If I punch this, it's going to go that way because the energy is transferring. I don't punch this and have it go this way. Same thing with this big guy. If I'm punching in that direction, his face is going to turn in that direction, not kind of back across into it. It doesn't make sense. So something to keep in mind. Again, a pet peeve of mine is where that happens. A character gets punched or kicked or whatever, and their head, body, whatever is turned the wrong way. He tosses Spidey. Not bad here. This is good. Him in the air. Again, very loosey-goosey body posture as he's being flung through the air. That's not bad. And then he crashes through a wall. Also, not too bad. We make a big note here of the tear in his costume. So this is, I get it from a story perspective. It's perfectly fine. We'll get to why this is important and why they make a note of it. Because Spidey's costume doesn't tear very often, at least at this stage of the game. But here's my problem. He's thrown through a wall and the shoulder of his costume tears. Why isn't his mask torn when he got hit by a bullet? It knocked him out, but it didn't tear the mask, yet somehow his shoulder got torn getting knocked through a wall, which he's done a million times, right? Punches out the guy again, very stiff. The kick is good. That's nice. I like using the diagonal of the rectangular panel to get your big motion in there. That's really nice, and a good idea. Anytime you have a panel that's slightly wider, so more horizontal than vertical, you want to try to utilize that corner to corner for using the maximum real estate you've got. This punch here, very stiff. He's just kind of that's where you want more of that twist. I want that fist all the way to the edge of that panel and this other fist way, way back over here to really emphasize the power and the energy coming into hit that punch. This one's not bad. This is a very classic superhero punch. And then this one here. It's fine. I don't like when you only have a fraction of the character. If you're going to go that, just do the arm. Just show me the arm and the hand and go really, really zoomed in big. And then it really looks like he's hit the guy. I'd even do, one of these kind of energy symbols for the hit. And then have the guy that far away because he's been flung off. Having just the face without any other body, the leg or anything like that, doesn't work for me as well. So there you go. Spidey knocks out the guy, kind of brings down some of the building and escapes, but he hasn't achieved his goal. His whole goal is to go find evidence because he doesn't believe his father would ever be a traitor, even though he has no true knowledge of the man whatsoever. He's just determined to find it. So all he's found was that there was a card that, why you would have membership cards, like a Costco card for being a spy, seems weird to me. But yeah, that's all he's got. And so here's where the costume thing comes in. You rip the costume specifically so that there's a little piece left so that the Red Skull can call in his guy. This dude who is the finisher, and he's going to use the costume to track Spidey down and destroy him. Fine. So, again, a couple of quick things. You've got a decent... Again, we're moving the camera around. I give Larry Lieber all the credit for constantly moving the camera around. We talk about this in the videos a lot. Your reader's eyes are the camera lens, just like you would have in a video, a movie, TV show, whatever. We can't move that camera through space to change the angles to create interesting visuals. So we move the visuals in relation to the reader's eyes. So when we use the term camera, we move the camera up above and we're looking down. That's not bad. It's fine. So that's why you see the back of the skull, top of the hat, this. But this guy, we don't see as much of a top down from this guy as we do sort of the other characters. So it kind of failed a little bit here. We should see a little more of the top of his head and maybe the shoulders than we do. This is more of a, realistically, just a small straight on view than a top down view. Here's another thing. I mentioned this before. This kind of feels like what they've done is they've drawn the head, no different shape than if he was looking straight at you, and just move the features down to make it look like he's looking down. But look how high the hairline is. And throughout the rest of the story, yes, he has a higher hairline, but not essentially this is be the middle of his head because he's looking down. So that hairline should be more, in this realm here, and then you've moved the features down. So it's sort of half and half. You've done the right thing by the features are right if his head is tilted, but the actual shape and stuff of the head isn't tilted. Or you've done it right and you've put the hairline right if he's looking straight at us, because the features would be higher on his face, but it's not. So it's sort of half and half. So this guy uses a spectral analysis of the fabric to track Spider-Man. Makes no sense, right? You can analyze what the material's made out of or things like that, but how does that track it? It's just material. Realistically, having something like, as we understand today, DNA, and there's, so we're going to use his DNA tracking, or we going to use an artificial device to track his scent the way a dog would, or something like that, fine. But this, it doesn't make sense in terms of what they're talking about. It's just sort of nebulous science, and they find him immediately. And the whole way this guy does stuff, I've got a car full of missile launchers, and I can just continue to launch missiles at Spider-Man. And so that's what happens. He uses his web, throws it into the canal. It's all good. So the guy's like, well, I'm going to send another missile, and you won't be able to do it. Why not? I don't understand. It's faster, so my webbing won't stop it. Your webbing didn't stop it. All the webbing did was connect you to it so that you could redirect the motion. It's just redirection of directional energy or directional momentum. Shouldn't matter how fast the thing is going. In fact, maybe it's easier. Silly. But I do like this. But he's like, okay, you got a missile that's going to home in on me. How about I bring it back to you? Let's see what happens. And blows up the car. This explosion is nice. Even this digital coloring pretty much works for me. I like the orange highlight on Spidey and the darker shades of red to kind of separate the elements a little bit. All of the black inks of just the explosion. It's so bright that, all you see is shadows. I would have gone maybe with a more red yellow here, and then change the sound effect to maybe more white. Again, something to brighten up that explosion, so that it's not so similar in tone. One problem, however, you've got exploding car, brick, glass, all this stuff, and that's what these things are supposed to be. It's supposed to be shrapnel, whether it's glass or some of it you can see through. You can see the cobblestone sort of through it. It needs to either be a different color, or it needs to be inked differently or something, so that we understand it's not just a piece of road. It blends in terms of the shape and the line angles and the color. So the shrapnel needed to be done differently. I like the yellow on Spidey's eyes, kind of highlight those. Again, digitally done, but nice little touch. This guy's face, he sees a missile coming at him. Yeah, he's sweating, but I don't see the terror. I've seen more terror on Aunt May's face when she wakes up from a bad dream. So I want to see those eyes even bigger. I want to see the mouth bigger. Maybe another hand, right? So a two-hand, like, oh no. Even if it's covered up by the dialogue, I'm fine with that. There's just not enough terror in this, in my opinion. Cars destroyed, fire, people running away, and Spidey's got to get the guy, pulls him out of a burning car. So this dude he's dying. He says, I'm done for. The explosion backfired on me. He's been in an exploded car that's on fire, and he is not singed. There's no, his coat, his special little, like, his fancy, I put my overcoat over my suit, is still on his shoulders. His tie is perfectly done. There's no tears, no nothing. There's no singes, there's no scratches, nothing. So I want to see if this guy dies in this explosion, I want to see what's going on and what happens. So, okay. Now he goes into a flashback, explains the whole thing about how the Red Skull found out that Richard, Peter's dad, was a double agent. So he's pretending to be a spy for the Red Skull, but he's really an American spy. So they need to get rid of them, and they do that by sabotaging this plane that Richard and Mary are in. And they realize, uh-oh, the jig is up. We've been caught as spies, and we're not going to make it. I do want to note real quick that Mary Parker, at least in this iteration, looks very much like Betty Brant. The kind of bangs, the dark hair, the little flip of the hair at the bottom. To me, I just immediately went, boy, she looks like Betty. So kind of creepy that that was Peter's first serious romance was with somebody that, at least in comic world, looks very similar to his mom. Okay. Plane explodes. They die. They plant false evidence, and nobody knows the difference. So Peter knows the truth, but there's nothing in writing. So now he's got to find proof, and he's going to get it out of the Red Skull if he has to. And so he heads back, and the Red Skull is waiting for him. But seems surprised, ironically. So should have known that his guy failed when the car exploded, but so be it. He's going to use a lot of technology to try to get rid of Spidey. Good down shot here of him breaking through the window and coming at the Red Skull. Again, we see those jagged kind of Kirby lines on the Skull's mask. Specifically for me, it's always the teeth and the mouth of the Red Skull. Spidey dodges the attack, and here where he leaps backwards, sticking to the wall, to the door frame, this is some really nice twisting of the body. This is good shoulder movement. The head is positioned really nicely in front of the neck. The way the hips are tilted and twisted also works for me. This, in my mind, is one of the better images of Spidey throughout the book. It's a very simple little thing, but it works out really, really nicely and is a kind of pose that I'm looking for more often than not. More traps that he's able to avoid, and leaping to try to double kick the Red Skull and take him out of the fight. This is pretty good. Good leap at Red Skull. Even though this figure is stiff, it makes sense in what he's trying to do with the jump and the kick. So I have no problem with that. I think that was good. Even this one, this Red Skull sort of elbowing him off the back and knocking him away. Spidey underestimating him. Now this is one where the Red Skull is a World War II villain. If this is the original Red Skull from the Captain America days, having these lines and wrinkles in the hands makes perfect sense. This is where you want that. It does emphasize that even though the Red Skull is fighting, he's possibly an older guy. Same thing here. I'm fine with that. This, though, I do go, what the heck is this? So Spidey has kind of avoided all the traps, and this is his go-to. I'm going to rip open my shirt and show you this block panel laser blaster I have strapped to my chest. Like, what is that? Who walks around with a block of, like, the only thing I would say that would be better is that you give up the idea that this is actually the original Red Skull and you say, like, this is a robot. And so this is, he rips it open in the inside of the robot and he says, you have defeated the Master's traps, but I am the last stand, the robot duplicate. You'll never capture the real Skull. And he shoots at him. It's fine. I have, again, no sweat with that whatsoever. But as kind of stating that this is the original dude, and it's weird. It's just weird. If you're going to do something like this, you want to do like an Iron Man kind of mechanical laser blasting under a shirt, just have it form to his body. It could be round. It doesn't have to be flat and square like that. It's very odd. And then This part is also weird. So his laser blast goes and it explodes his chair, and now the whole place is burning down, and you go, oh well, maybe the Red Skull got killed in the explosion, kind of hinting that way. But this little sound effect of Spidey as he ducks away from the explosion is this like, it's not a word balloon, it's not a sound effect, it's somewhere in between, and it's extremely odd and unnecessary. Just weird. The last thing here, okay, good. I like this. The place is on fire. So where's Spidey going to get out? He's going to crawl along the ceiling to get away. And so you've got the nice yellow lighting underneath of him, of his body, where the rest is in a real dark shadow because the fire is so bright. This I really like. I think that's a nice bit of lighting. It could have had the white of his eyes here. Wouldn't have been bad. But overall, not too bad. And then this last thing. So he finds out, there was this Red Skull membership card, but hidden in the Red Skull membership card is a U.S. government card. So again, if you're a spy, why do you have identification that identifies you as a spy? And why did the Red Skull take that and put it in the other one? I don't. And here's the last tip. The only way that Peter knows this is because the card, the outside, got singed in the fire, but it's tucked in his belt. So his costume didn't get singed, his skin wasn't burned, but somehow it managed to just burn enough of an edge of a card that the inside card could be found. Like, none of that makes sense. And he's all excited. So now he's going to swing away. He's so happy. And again, we leave this two big things way up in the air, or at least one big thing way up in the air. How's he getting home? How is he getting home? Mr. Fantastic's gone. He's not swinging home from Algeria. Again, we don't need to wrap up that. We're gonna box up the present. It doesn't need a bow on it. We're just gonna leave that be. And then the other thing here is this head. I've talked about it ad nauseum through this video. This is bad. Like, this is not how you draw a head tilted back. You got the under the chin part, great, but man, the eyes just don't make sense. It's just spread all over. He's got just a weird head, and obviously, just kind of like, hey, we're just going to wing it and do the best we can. There are ways, we've seen plenty of examples of Spidey looking up at his chin. There's examples to use. Why they couldn't get this right is beyond me. But it's tough when you want to close out the book on a high note, and that's the image that we get. So very quickly, because it's an annual, here's your story. Lot of story, lot of pages, 40 pages of story. Big long, that's a lot. But there's also more here to kind of wrap it up. And I'm just going to scroll through it. We're not going to get into any of the details, but it's just to show you again who the people are in Spidey's life, things like that. And again, I note that this is Betty Brant, J. Jonah Jameson's secretary, looks hauntingly like Peter's mother. Creepy. Fantasizing about playing sports with his spider powers and how it wouldn't be remarkably fair. He would dominate everything. Where things are in relationship to New York City. So Peter and Spidey live in a real place, which is very nice. And then the joke of drawing Spidey like other cartoon characters. And again, most of these are either comic strip or like children's funny books, maybe with the exception of this one here, which I would argue is probably supposed to be Superman. But, Dick Tracy, Charlie Brown, these are comic strip characters. So yeah. And then this little bit back here, which is John Romita, Larry Lieber, and I'm assuming this is, they say good old Smiley. I'm assuming that's Stan. And them trying to come up with ideas and very, very satirical cartoonisms. So, interesting, but there we go. So that is the end of Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 5. We'll wrap it up here on the cover as we scroll back through. Boom. So that all said, let's cut back over to the desk and we'll wrap things up for this issue. Okay, so again, I warned you. Thank you for sticking around through the video. We knew it was going to be a long one because there is so much story to go over. There are interesting things. There are good things and bad things. We dig into, it's kind of been glossed over up till now, the why is Peter an orphan? Why does he live with his aunt and uncle? And we know his parents are dead, but we didn't know this backstory. Now we get that reveal of that backstory. We've got a different artist. We've got Larry Lieber. So we get to see a little bit of a different style there, which is interesting. This cover, really tipping into the aura of the times, you know, that late 60s. So we have that sort of psychedelic spinning whirlwind in space of Spidey and all his supporting characters. So that's kind of cool and different. And yeah, it's hard to believe this whole book, I guess it'd be probably 48 pages, right? 40 pages of stories, 8 pages of backup stuff. 25 cents at the time. Crazy, right? 25 cents for a giant annual. That a king size special, as they say. That'd be pretty cool. So, in terms of a rating, the story is kind of hokey. I didn't really need to know it. We could have just said his parents died in a plane crash, and they didn't need to be spies or double agents or whatever. So I'm going to give it, I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Again, if I skip this and I never knew the history that his parents were secretly spies, it doesn't change anything. In fact, maybe the idea like his parents are just regular people maybe makes Spidey a little more heroic, that it's not like, it's not in his blood. It's not in his family nature to be these unbelievable heroes. It's something that Peter did because it's in him and the way he was raised by May and Ben. So I think I kind of like it better if he's just an average Joe that ends up in an extraordinary situation and then does what he does with it. So anyway, that's my take on it. I'm very interested to hear your take on things as well, between the artwork, the story. How do you feel about Peter's parents being spies? All that kind of stuff. Leave those comments. I'd love to see them. In the meantime, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can win some free art. And I will see you here next week as we get back to the regular series and more Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks.